Central is in Edinburgh, talking to Jim Corr, who may be known to many people as one-fourth of the internationally famous Irish family band, the Corrs. However, Jim came to the consciousness of Freedom Central through his work as an activist and educator. Jim is probably the only vocal entertainment celebrity that is speaking out about the issues that threaten humanity at present. Jim, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate you squeezing us in. We know you're very busy. Before we tackle your information you've been presenting, how is it that you've come to be on this journey communicating this information?
Well, I suppose my journey of my awakening, I suppose, started about 4 years ago. And it was when I properly started to study the anomalies in relation to 9/11. And I discovered that the official government story was a complete lie. It insulted the intelligence of a child. And I decided to continue on out of curiosity, just kind of studying, well, you know, who's really in control and what's the ultimate agenda. I discovered some pretty unpalatable things, and when I did, I felt that I had not just a duty, but I had an overwhelming urge to bring this information out into the public arena, which is what I did by setting up my website and doing some interviews. And then I suppose the next logical step really was to start doing speaking engagements and bringing the information out into the public arena more, which is what I've started to do. And that's really, it's just about getting the information out to people. That's what I feel is very important.
You're constantly surrounded by people in the industry that's all about perpetuating the illusion. How have you managed to break free yourself?
Well, break free, my conditioning, I suppose, ran very, very deep. I suppose I naively would have thought that most of what I was seeing on the television was at least had some element of truth in it. But, you know, I've learned that things are a lot different now, particularly in relation to staged terrorist events like 9/11, 7/7. And I haven't broken away from music. I love music, you know. That's my first love, you know, and I'll always continue to do that. I love writing, and you know, this is kind of it. But I feel this is a very important part of my life as well, to be bringing good information to people, and people are wakening up in their droves, I believe. You know, it's all good. I just think it's if I have a role to play in this, that my role is to hopefully get to the people who are asleep, like I was for a long time, and also to the people who are awakening.
Absolutely. How do you go about raising awareness, and what do you focus on? What is your point that you try to get across to bring people into this information?
Well, I believe that if people can understand properly what happened on 9/11, and more to the point, what didn't happen on 9/11, I believe that it can open up their perception to the agenda, what is really going on behind the scenes. Very important that we all understand 9/11, because it's the nexus doorway into the bigger picture. So I focus on that in my presentation. I also focus on the anomalies in relation to the London bombings, and also I talk about false flag terrorism, because in my own process of awakening, it was only when I got to understand what false flag operations were that it kind of pulled the whole thing in together for me, because then I understood that if you've got an elite that are involved in the military-industrial complex, and they desire, obviously, war is hugely profitable to them. Well, how can they dupe a nation, an entire nation, into getting behind an illegal, unjust war? Because most people hate war for obvious reasons. So how did they do that? And that's where false flag operations come in. And I went back through history, learned about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. I learned about Hitler having his own men set fire to the Reichstag building, and which allowed him to clamp down on the opposition and gain more power. And how through the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which apparently never happened now, where a Vietnamese PT boat was supposed to have fired upon a US naval cruiser. It never happened, but it allowed the US to commit to the Vietnam War.
Yes.
So they use false flag operations to sucker entire nations and their allies into getting behind illegal, unjust wars, because wars are hugely profitable. And not to mention, of course, the fact that when they can go in and covertly colonize another nation like Afghanistan and Iraq, then of course they're able to dominate the opium trade and also the oil trade.
So how have your family reacted to the work you're doing, Jim? You don't talk much about that. Are they supportive? Do they understand this information? And how have they processed it, and how is it affecting your career?
I think they understand what I'm doing. They understand that this is very important to me, and that's all that matters. And when I learned of the inconsistencies in the 9/11 fairy tale, I had an urge to tell everyone, and I was bombarding everyone that I met with information, including my family. But once I set up my website as a hub for information, I relaxed a hell of a lot. So I don't get into preaching to anybody about this now, because I have my outlet of expression, and also, of course, doing the speaking engagements. I suppose that they're like most families. I suppose it's they can go onto my website if they want. They know my views very clearly. They're there on my website. They're there in the videos that I make, they can take the information, take or leave it like anybody else can.
What do you think is the ultimate goal of the movement at the moment? How do you think it's going to fulfill itself?
Okay. Well, the 9/11 Truth movement has made such grounds, has done basically such a successful job, that you can now see what is happening now is that the mainstream media can no longer ignore the basic facts. And we had Geraldo Rivera on Fox News interviewing the father of one of the victims who was killed in the towers. And what the father had done with a group of the family members was to create a short clip, a video clip. Basically, was all about Building 7, World Trade Center 7, which collapsed neatly into its own footprint at free fall speed, and no plane hit it whatsoever. So they aired this ad called Building What on all the cable channels, I think, in New York. And so the mainstream media cannot ignore this any longer. So I reckon that what they're going to try and do now is to basically try and control the opposition, and probably try and blame it on the lower level people that were involved in this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. 9/11 Truth is just, it's out. It's out of the bottle. There's nothing they can do about that. All they can do is try and control it. So, but as I say, very important that people do understand properly 9/11, because it is the doorway through which you get an understanding for what is really going on behind the scenes. And I put all this information up on my website, what the agenda is, and what the powers that be are trying to do as more and more people wake up to the actual agenda. Is that to clamp down with the incremental building of a scientific dictatorship. And I outlined this clearly in my presentation. Is it okay?
Do that again for me if you don't mind. Sorry. Yeah? What they're trying to do?
What the powers that be are trying to do, as more and more people awaken, is to clamp down. They can't suppress the information, so they're going to try and clamp down, suppress people individually through the incremental building of a scientific dictatorship. And there's a huge backlash happening. I mean, we see it with these full body X-ray scanners that they're introducing into airports worldwide. Which is a gross violation of our privacy. And these machines they emit terahertz ionizing radiation, and they've been shown to cause cancer and tear apart DNA. You don't want to become through these things. There is a massive backlash happening, Lawsuits have been filed. And people are making a stand, and that's the most important thing, that people learn to say no again. Very important that you stand up and you become aware of your own power.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you perceive the role of the alternative media? I mean, it is a growing genre of media. More and more people are coming into awareness. What do you think the role of alternative media is? You are obviously establishing yourself very bravely as an info warrior, with much respect from people. Where do you see alternative media evolving forward?
Well, you know, there are aspects of the alternative media that, like the mainstream media, are controlled also. We have to be, you know, careful where we go to. Basically the sources of information within the alternative media that are not, say, not being honest about 9/11, and not letting people know about the inconsistencies and irregularities would be a concern of mine. And so those sources I would stay away from, like Democracy Now!, like Alternet, like some, you know, if they haven't passed the 9/11 litmus test, which is an important one to pass, well then I'm not interested in getting any information from there whatsoever. And I think people are as you go along, as you educate yourself, you develop a fairly decent degree of discernment, and you can establish for yourself, you know, what rings true or what doesn't, depending on your experience, and that is important. But I mean, as a whole, the alternative media is important. Very important that there is another avenue for information open to us outside of the mainstream media. I'm not saying that the mainstream media is all bad. It's not. It's not what they're telling us. It's what they're not telling us, in particularly in relation to 9/11 and 7/7, which were very obvious false flag operations when you use your own mind, you know, your own independent mind, and start looking into these. So, I mean, it's very, very important. And thankfully, the alternative media has gained the high ground over the mainstream media, and most people are now getting their sources from their information from sources that they feel are introspective, like the alternative media.
How do you feel that people can help contribute and accelerate this process of awareness?
Seek the truth and share the truth. It's the most important thing. You know, what is the truth? What is the truth about 9/11? Is it true that 19 hijackers armed with box cutters, orchestrated by the guy in the cave, carried out that attack? I mean, when you look at there, you are straight away. You've got anomalies, because at least 8 of those hijackers have turned up alive, as was reported by the Times in London. So, very, very important that we seek the truth, you know, and to share it with as many people as possible, regardless of the ridicule that comes our way. Because, you know, when you go deeply into this, it's not just a battle for hearts and minds. In the information war, I believe it's also a battle for souls.
And how do you see things shaping up for the future? Do you reckon we're on the winning side? Do you see hope? Are you an optimist? Is it going to get worse before it gets better?
Well, I know that we're on the winning side, but I believe it probably is going to get worse before it gets better, as more and more people are waking up. Ultimately, I have great hope and great aspirations for mankind. Very important that as we do take action, and we do need to take action, it's not, you can't just sit and meditate, you know, which is very powerful as well, but it's not going to be sufficient, I believe, to pray and meditate over what is coming, even though it's very important. But we got to take action ourselves. And when I mean action, I mean being aware of your own power, saying no to the system that is seeking to enslave us, literally, and to get out and let our so-called leaders know, basically, get them to start listening to their employers, and we are their employers. And it's very important that we do this completely non-violently. There must be no violence. and I agree with the whole notion of peaceful mass non-compliance. That's the way that it's going to be. It's going to happen. Very important. I think that when people are protesting, that they must be very aware of agent provocateurs that are going to be thrown into the mix, as the police were found to be agent provocateuring in the G20, the last G20 meeting in Canada. So those people are causing violence, which we will probably come across, and they need to be pushed back into the police lines where they belong. So very aware. Yeah, I just hope that it's going to be completely peaceful, because we're not going to achieve anything by using violence.
Absolutely. And Jim, do you have any one last message for humanity?
Last messages. Yeah, I would just say that message to humanity: just be very hopeful, be very positive about what is coming. You know, this is like the rebirthing of the entire planet. You know, and it's the rebirthing of ourselves individually as we grow more into empathy and compassion for each other. And it's a beautiful thing that is happening. It's important to be, yes, very aware of what the dark workers are doing and what their agenda is, but also to be mindful of the billions of really, really good people on this planet who are genuinely out for the advancement of humankind, for the positive advancement of humankind. And like I said before, it's very, very important that we seek the truth and that we share the truth with other people.
Yeah.
Very important.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, it's an honour and a privilege to have you to contribute to Freedom Central. On behalf of all those who are part of this dynamic process, we thank you for your time today and your efforts overall. So much respect, and hope to work with you again soon sometime.
Thank you. It was lovely talking to you.